So, hi everyone, I'm Meg Douglas Howie, I'm a design lead on Verify, and I was going to talk with Lena Nilsson today, but unfortunately she's unwell, so cool. So service design at GDS, we thought we'd talk a bit about this because it is something that we talk about as an organisation a lot, but we could be a little bit mysterious. So where are the service designers? We're spread across 9 teams, and there's 13 of us all together. And so there's some of us that are working on helping develop the products that we work on, and also service assessments. And then there are other teams that do more of a kind of consultant function. So they're helping across the public sector and they're helping international governments to design good services. And we also have our user-centered design team who are raising the capability of public sector civil servants. So that's kind of all of us, and we're the kind of specialist service designer, got it in the job title, but there's also a lot of people across the organisation who have good service design skills and who use service design tools as well. So what do service designers do? Well, service design is the design of services. But obviously in this building, a lot of us are working on designing services, it's most of what we do, so that's not necessarily that helpful. So we all wear different hats in the sort of design process. A user researcher is looking at understanding user needs, content designers designing content. So then what do service designers actually do? Well, we have the bigger picture overview. So as Lena describes it, we are the spider in the web who juggles different aspects of the service. So an interaction designer might be focusing on the experience between a user and a single touch point. So maybe that's the website. And the service designer is looking more holistically across the experience, across all kinds of different parts of the product or service. So we kind of think end to end. We think what happens before the user interacts with the service, what happens during their interaction, and then what happens afterwards. So right across the whole time frame. And we think front to back. So what is a user looking at on a website, who are they talking to, but then also what happens in the background, in the back office, what's the technology underneath that. And we look across channels. So this is an example of how you might map an interaction that somebody's having across different channels over time. So the types of things that service designers do are identifying what the real problem is. And you might have seen posters around GDS saying, you know, it's okay to ask, what's the problem we're solving here? And those posters were made by Sanjay, so it won't surprise you to learn that he's a service designer. We facilitate a shared understanding within and outside of the team. So we do a lot of kind of helping teams working together by taking kind of technical information, sort of user insights, and thinking through the whole journey and kind of stitching that in together and playing it back to people so that the team can have shared context and understanding. And we spot opportunities for reducing cost and complexity, and that might be for a user to simplify their experience, or it might be for an organisation. And we help define the scope of services, and this has a lot to do with that first thing of understanding what the real problem is. So service designers are often kind of weaving together and aligning these 3 different areas of, you know, what is important to the organisation, what do users need, and then how does technology support that. But at heart, we are user-centered. We're part of the user-centered design discipline. So we put users first. So it's maybe a little bit more like that. And in terms of where service designers sit in the organisation, we're kind of an interesting one because it really doesn't have anything to do with maybe whether you're a midweight or a senior, but service designers often work kind of all over the place. So they're really happy on delivery teams, making sure that the product or service is really as good as it can be, but also can help senior decision makers with formulating a proposition or a strategy for something. So what we do in each design phase, at the start and kind of pre-discovery and discovery, we create service strategies. So we work through the process of research, kind of formulating that research into an understanding of what the current as-is journey is, then coming up with ideas for how we might make the thing better, stitching that together into storyboards or blueprints to kind of paint a picture of what the future might be like, and then going into designing the actual touch points. So in the beginning of discovery, we're kind of chasing squirrels, sort of going off in all kinds of different directions. And then towards the end of it, we're helping to create frameworks to kind of bring that stuff together and create a cohesive sense of where we're going. And often that ends up looking like a journey map or a blueprint, which kind of sort of gives a picture of what the future might look like. And then in alpha and beta, we make sure the team work towards that vision and iterate it based on what we're learning. So that might be kind of orchestrating the design of a specific feature, or it might be zooming in and out to spot gaps and opportunities across the whole service. And then in live, we're creating service improvements. So that might be rethinking the future service to inspire the team and shape what to work on next, which kind of takes us back in the cycle, back to pre-discovery, discovery work, and working through that cycle again. So now I'm just going to talk a bit about how we've used service design and service design tools on Verify. So on Verify, our vision is that it's safe and easy for people to create and reuse their digital identities so that they can access services across the public and private sector. And you might notice that that's not really talking about a product, that's talking about a vision for what the kind of future and one of the big parts of the kind of digital ecosystem might look like in the future. And in Q1, last quarter, our team were given a mission to design the future model. So we knew that in March next year, our current framework starts to expire, and we needed to kind of figure out, okay, well, what's next for Verify? And we had a bit of a steer from the program team, but really it was a big figure out what we need to do next and then how we're going to get there. So start of the quarter, our kind of team's mental space looked a bit like that. We had a few things that we knew we were going to carry over. We had a few kind of known unknowns, so things we knew we'd need to figure out. And that was stuff like we're going to need to work out a new certification model, and then a bunch of things we didn't know yet, but we were going to discover. And then halfway through the quarter, I think we knew a little bit less because we kind of realised which things we thought we could use that we couldn't use. And then we sort of identified a bunch more things that we needed to figure out. And by the end of the quarter, we had a huge pile of stuff that needed to get done. And I hope our unknown unknowns looked like that, but that's obviously just for illustrative purposes. I've got no idea how many things we didn't know. But all of that meant that basically we felt kind of like this about our roadmap. It was obvious that there was a huge amount of work to do, and there was a really complex change of dependencies and things to be able to do it. But we didn't really have like a narrative or a structure of how that all fitted together. So we knew we've got to do GPT-44, but why is it important to do that before or after the ops manual? Who's using it? What for? And we just had so much going on that we couldn't kind of keep track of it all. And of course on Verify, it wasn't just about changing the product. We've got layers and layers of different governance, we've got standards, we've got engagement and relationship, we've got technical implementations that we deliver and that our partners deliver. So it was thinking across all of those different things and making changes across all of them. So kind of chaos. But we use a technique called service blueprinting. So a service blueprint is a tool, it's a thing that you get a sort of map, piece of paper at the end of it, but it's also a process that I took our team through. And this is our service blueprint of the provide or consume identity and attribute services on the trust framework, so our future model. And what this does is it walks through from left to right, what are all the steps that all of the different actors would have to take to be able to do things in the future. So just as an example, this is the detail of it. This shows an attribute provider. So that might be someone who holds data and they want to join the framework and make that data available to people to check identities with. So they're doing steps, and then our kind of governance function is doing steps to make sure that the provider is doing things right. And then we've got approval and certification bodies, so auditors, patchbot, do it later. Approval and certification bodies also doing things. We had about 8 different actors all doing stuff sometimes simultaneously. So being able to kind of lay it out, even though it's a really big map, just being able to see it all and see how the whole thing fitted together into a service that we were trying to deliver was really helpful for our team to kind of navigate the complexity. And we didn't end up just using it on our team, we used it to inform future mission planning. So I walked our program team through it, and we ended up with 3 teams in the next quarter structured around phases of the blueprint and looking at a particular user group. So we had people looking at how you join the framework as a provider, how you join it as a consumer, and then how we run and operate the framework. And then we used it at the start of the quarter after that to bring our new team members up to speed and help share the context of the information that we had learned in the last quarter with new people. And that meant that people could start to understand how the thing they were working on related to what other teams were doing and how we all were working together onto one service. And still going, we used it a couple of weeks ago again for a kind of red team, blue team exercise that Lawrence Berry designed. So in this workshop we were looking at how attackers could target our service and where the vulnerabilities were. So we had user researchers, we had our counter fraud and threat intelligence specialists, we had policy people, we had technical architects, we had designers, and we used the blueprint as, again, that common understanding of this is what the service is, where would we look for weaknesses, where would we attack it. So just to summarise this map, which has really been working hard for us, and what it's been doing is helping communicate the big picture. It's been informing our priorities because we can start to understand, why is this thing important? What do we need to deliver to enable all of these different steps to take place? It's helped us share knowledge and context across the team and across the program, and it's helped different disciplines work together effectively. So when can service designers help you the most? And we're talking about this because we've got a limited number of service designers here at GDS, and we've kind of got more demand than we can currently fill, so people are often asking us for help. So this is where service designers can be the most effective. Making sure that the problem is right from the start. So that might be on a discovery team, or it might be kind of scoping work at a program level. Bringing together big changes into a cohesive whole. So if you've got a big program with a lot of changes going on, service designers can help knit that into something that makes sense and kind of simplifies some of that chaos. And making sure the layers of product, technology, operations, policy, whatever else you want to throw in there, kind of knit together into something that works for users. So that might be on a product team or across several product teams, but helping kind of weave everything together into a service. So if you've heard all of this and you want more service design in your life, you can talk to Martin Jordan, who's here. He's our head of service design. So if you're thinking either you want someone internally or you're thinking about hiring a service designer, then he can help you. Look at the design community page for training and events. So there's a really good introduction to service design training and some follow-up courses as well that the user centered design team runs. So Clara here and Martin organise that. And that page also has information about Service Thursdays. So the last Thursday of every month, we do a bit of a case study from across government about a service that somebody's worked on, and they're always really interesting too. So you can find out all of that on the community page, and also we're on Slack on the Service Designers channel. Thank you.